Alright, if you made it through my video series of the TPIS Mini Ram, I had mentioned at the beginning of the video that I would take maybe a little time to give my explanation on why I think this is the better intake system out there. And now this is subjective, okay? This is just my opinion and based on the research and based on that, on my setup that I'm building with my TPI engine. This has ended up being the best setup to go with. So, first off, if you're to compare this, let's say, these are kind of, there's some others out there, but these are the more popular other options that you can go with. The Holley Stealth Ram is one of them, which pretty much, as far as what I've seen on dyno tests, the results are very similar to the TPIS as far as performance go. The one big negative thing about that is why I didn't go with it, and there's other systems out there that are similar to that, is the height. The height, it's like 2 inches taller, and for a Corvette person, it will not fit underneath my hood unless I change the hood. So that automatically took it off the list because I wasn't looking to modify the car that much. So that's why I didn't bother with going with it. But if you have hood clearance, or it's not an issue, that's a good setup in itself, and it'll be pretty close to performance numbers, if not maybe a little better, depending on what your setup is and how you go with it. So it's a good system, but it won't fit, so that's why I didn't bother with it. The next one is the Excel Super Ram. First off, the biggest problem with this is availability. They don't make it anymore, so you're going to have to dig around, search eBay, car sites, or whatever, find one used, and you don't know what condition is, so, and they could be very expensive. The other big issue with those is they're very prone to air leaks, so it's kind of like strike two, and for me, that particular application is limited on horsepower, and what I wanted is I wanted to achieve 500 horsepower. So even with that system, from what I've done studies and reviews, it wouldn't be able to hit 500. I mean, there might be people that have hit it, but based on how that guy is built, it's like the runner system of the normal TPI system, but it's shorter. So what it does have an advantage over most systems. It has probably the longest torque curve available out of the long tube runners versus going with this. So the flip side to that, what's better for that intake, if you do have one that's better than this, is that it has a better torque curve. And some guys that reported they've tried all these out, they like that one the most because it had the best pulling power. So it just depends on your build. My build in particular is going to be for road racing, so I'm looking at mid-range to top RPM. So that's another reason why I steer towards this versus trying to find one of those. So the other option is you keep the system you have, the TPI, with the runners, and then what you do is you add the big mouth runners on there. The big problem with this is not many people are making them anymore. Ellerbrock stopped making them, LSLP doesn't even make them, TPIS doesn't even offer theirs, and the only company out there that still has them that are available is Arizona Speed and Marine. So but the limitations with this, I was looking for max horsepower. Like I said, I wanted 500 horsepower. Well, typically what you get on those with a good build, 350 is about 425 horsepower, 383 is about 450 horsepower max. Now, give or take a few depending on whose build or who dynoed it, but that's generally, on average, the max you're going to get out of that system. And also, it's limited on RPM. It pretty much, all the TPI, even if you do lots of porting on those with the runners, they flatten out. Most of the time they're done at 5,000 RPM to 5,300. That's about where the top horsepower mark is. So you're not going to be able to achieve getting an engine. See, that was the other goal. I wanted to be able to run my engine up to about 6,500 RPM. So there was no way. So that option was not going to go. The last option out there was the LT1 Intake, and there's guys that have done conversions. I think, oh, hey, that's a great idea. I mean, if you look at the TPI system, it's pretty much an LTI intake. Same thing. A couple big changes though. Number one, if you look at this, it's gapped. It's got a big air gap on there. Okay, that's a big advantage. A lot of your aftermarket intakes that are going out there, even in carburetors, they call air gaps on there, and they've shown on studies that just with that air gap in there, keeping the heat of the oil galley off the intake and the fuel air charge can be worth 15 to 20 foot-pounds just by itself, just because you're keeping your intake cooler right off the bat. Just like the LS motor, if you've looked at them, they have a separation from the intake to keep it cooler. They have like a plate that's there. It's not, you know, the intake doesn't bolt directly and it's exposed to the oil galley. So that's one big advantage of this system over that. The other advantage is when you get those, well, LTI doesn't run with the conventional distributor, so you have to get a hole, machine it in there, set it up. And the other big disadvantage with the LT1 intake is that cooling system. It's a reverse flowed coolant system, so it doesn't match. So you have to do a lot of modifications. And what I've studied, you know, unless you want to rig it together, yeah, you could probably build one cheaper and do it if you don't care how it looks. But I saw one guy that did a really nice job on it and it looked professional, but he said by the time he was done with it and modifying it to make it work, he spent as much money, or if not more, than what he would have spent to buy the TPI system out of the box. So that pretty much had sold me on like, hey, it was a no-brainer. So sometimes price can be deceiving. You could think that in the front, well, hey, like this kit, I think I spent $1,300 for the complete kit. Well, yeah, sure, you could probably find an LT1 intake for $100 or $80, but yeah, the price is way cheaper. But by the time you put it all together, your cost will actually be more with your time, the time to find everything to make it work. You'll actually find out that the overall cost of just buying their kit, bolting it on, and being able to drive it is a way better option. So that concludes the whole video series. Hopefully that's helped you out and gave you a little bit of insight and some direction on that. Just remember, when you build this setup though, you will lose, you know, you do trade off. You get more horsepower out of this guy, but you will trade off your torque. So take that into consideration and do a little bit of studying, and then you can make your own opinion on what you want to go with. So, all right, thanks again. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.